Baby, CreepTime the podcast is going on tour and coming to a city near you.
So head over to creeptime.com to get your tickets to come see CreepTime live.
Well, you can't trust County.
Hi, baby.
Hi. You know what I've missed, though? It was fabulous. I've missed our After Darks a lot.
Oh, I've missed our After Dark so much.
I'm like gnawing at bars right now. I really need an After Dark. And I also want us to do a Wicked After Dark. Like, we don't even pick a word. We just talk about Wicked.
It's just Wicked.
Yes.
That's actually our new show.
I'm spiraling out hard.
Silas Dean presents Wicked.
I'm not even kidding. I thought about rerouting the Sinister, and
song.
I was like, maybe it's just like Silas discusses Wicked for like a whole year.
How many times have you seen the movie?
I've only seen it twice, but I'm in the theaters, but I'm re-watching it now at home with the commentary, which is so fun.
Oh,
like cast
I didn't
commentary.
know you could do that.
Yeah, it's brand. I think they just started it like at the new year, but you can now watch it at home. I'm plugging it. I'm a secret Universal partner.
I'm like, if we get you hooked up with Universal.
No, they are doing brand deals for it, and I was pissed. Again, didn't get to go to the premiere, didn't get a brand deal for Wicked, and I'm like, what more do you people want? Do you want to see me take it off? What do you want?
I'm like, we will fly. I will fly to LA just so I can do this with you.
Please. My finger would be shaking because I was telling Stu before we jumped on, like, I have the shakes right now because I went way too hard with working out today.
Baby, that New Year's resolution is fully kicked in. Although you were already on your grind before the new year.
But I was thinking about that, though. Because, Jan 1st, like, after that, you go in the first week of January, you're like, the gym is going to be packed.
The gym is hell.
It wasn't bad today. It wasn't terrible.
Oh, that's good.
I go in the middle of the day, so, like, nobody's going to be there.
I mean, I definitely have a few pounds that I could shed. I feel like so hard on the food this Christmas. Like, it was like cookies, pies.
That's what you're supposed to do.
Wine. I know. It's exactly what you're supposed to do. And I loved every minute of it.
I'm just trying to build up stamina. I feel like that's the thing. Like, I'm like doing cardio today should not have put me in the state that it did. Like, my whole body, muscular system, like, collapsing. Circulatory system, she's shutting down.
No.
It's really bad. Heart, I'm on the transplant list. Like, it's getting bad.
That is one thing.
After 20 minutes of cardio.
When I first started like getting into running and everything, my heart was like, "Girl, no, we cannot." It takes so long to build up that stamina, but it's worth it. You'll get there.
I hope so. Jesus Christ, I hope so.
Oh my God. Well, baby, you're gonna need the stamina for the case today because the story I want to bring to y'all today is so reminiscent of Brandon Swanson to me. And I think it harkens back to old school creep time in a major way. Today's case focuses on the disappearance of a young man who was driving home from college, ready to get back and spend Christmas break with his family. And sadly, he would never make it. Instead, he vanished off of a backwoods road, but actually with a trace. Plenty of clues were left behind, but have still led us to a dead end 4 years later. In December of 2020, a car belonging to a young man named Jason Landry would be discovered crashed and abandoned in a ditch near a field in Lulling, Texas, approximately 2.5 hours away from his parents' home in Missouri City. And when we unpack how the vehicle was found, the bizarre items, and the circumstances surrounding it, I think you and the creepers are going to walk away from this case feeling so unnerved and shaken. Like, talk about shaky, baby. I'm like shaking right now just thinking about everything we're going to talk about.
This
with
is
this case.
Weird already. This is a weird setup.
It's so weird. But creepers, also, I just want to say, if you're driving back right now from Christmas break, this case might feel especially eerie just because I'm realizing there are some people that are probably still making their way home, and especially college kids.
Right,
so,
who like stayed for the New Year's.
Yes. So if you are driving back right now, and you're on any back roads, please, A, be careful, and B, the story might be especially creepy to listen to. So just take care of yourselves, babies. But before we launch into that, I just want to say welcome back, creepers, and
welcome back.
That you all had
the rug pull every time kills me. You know my circulatory system is bad, baby.
Oh my God. I was thinking, like, honestly, after I wrote that intro, I was just like, and thank God we're coming back from the most wonderful time of the year, because it gets really freaky. Like, this case is so old school vibes to me. Like, I'm excited to bring it to you in the Creepers today, because I think it just scratches a certain itch, but it's so freaky. Like, you're gonna be thrown, baby.
It is like what you said, like it's the beginning episodes of Creep Time where we talked about a lot of the young men, the men in their 20s that went missing, which, by the way, don't know if you saw this, but got tagged in it a ton of times. Oh my God, Brandon Lawson.
Yes.
Found. Remains confirmed. Brandon Lawson.
No. What? Okay, my heart is actually going. Where?
You didn't see this? It was in the same area, I guess, like not too far from where he last went missing, because I know we covered a lot that were similar, like Brandon Swanson, Brandon Lawson, Brian Schaefer. They're all kind of a blur because they're all young men who went missing under strange circumstances. But he was the one who was actually on the call with 911, if you'll remember this call. And you could hear things in the background. He's like, I'm being chased. And then he was on the phone with his brother when the cops were there. And his brother was like, where are you? And Brandon on the phone said, what do you mean? I'm right here.
Yes, I remember that.
And they never found it. They did search efforts. Like, I forget which part of, this was also Texas. I forget which part of Texas, but they seemingly never found him. And then years and years went by, decades actually. And they found some remains recently in the last year. But of course, they were skeletal. So it would take a lot of time to confirm whether or not those were him. Confirmation. Brandon Lawson has been found.
I'm going to have to, if I can stomach it, I'm going to have to get off and read about this after we record. That is crazy. It's like super close to where they thought he went missing.
I don't know of the exact location. I'll be totally honest, but I do know it was definitely still within the perimeter of where they had searched previously. So either he was missed or he was dumped later on, or it's just so mysterious what could have actually happened. I still have questions about those search efforts and like how aggressive they were or not. Who's to say?
Well, I mean, if it's anything like this case, I don't think the search efforts were all too great. I don't know. I forget what the county police situation was like with Brandon, but this one, you're going to need to strap in a little bit.
That's your first county police of 2025.
County police, baby. Oh, God. Well, I should say, if you're new here, A, get to know Can't Trust County, and B, I'm Stu, and this is Silas with the vocal performance of the year 2025.
I'm going to drink my tea and I'm going to be quiet. Thank you.
And we cover new true crime cases every single Friday, spanning the unsolved, paranormal, survival stories, and so much more. So if you are new here, please, please, please follow us on Apple or Spotify. Hit that bell notification so you always get an alert when we drop new episodes, baby. And also leave us a review. Those are really helpful. You can leave us reviews on Apple. You can leave us reviews on Spotify. Also, Spotify for creators is super interactive these days. We've got video episodes. You can leave us comments. We can comment back. So make sure to go check us out there if you want to watch us on video. And if you
Today's
want to
the first day, by the
audio,
way, of ad-free.
I know.
Spotify.
I saw that. Yeah. So make sure to go check that out, creepers. And also, babies, go to creeptime.com because we have a tour coming up in less than
2 months.
days,
Less than
baby.
2 months. Yeah.
Yeah. We're like, and the admin, we're like, I twitch. We're so excited to see all of y'all that have already gotten your tickets. But if you haven't gotten tickets and you want to come see us out west, make sure you go to creeptime.com/tour, I believe, and check out those tickets. And we can't wait to see those of y'all that have already gotten them. And I must say with that, we're going to need to take some Magic Mind on the road so we can get some sleep, baby.
That is a brand new one for us because we haven't talked all too much about Magic Mind Sleep because I think when we first mentioned it, I don't know if it was like readily available. It is now available. So you've tried Magic Mind, you know it well and good at this point because of our Magic Minds, but Magic Mind Sleep is a very new turn for them where if you're having trouble getting some shut-eye, you can now try the sleep shots that are available on their website.
Yes. And I don't think there's like melatonin in them. I don't think it's because I think there are some people that get like addicted to taking melatonin to help them go to sleep. It's again, just like original Magic Mind, like habit forming, tastes really good. It's kind of like a lavendery, lemony taste. It's a little bit different from regular Magic Mind.
It's a great mix, actually. Lavender and lemon together. very, very nice taste.
Yeah.
And they also reformulated it, I believe, from the previous. I mean, don't hold me to this, Magic Mom, but
Yeah.
I think they reformulated it. I'm pretty sure from the previous iteration that I tried, and I popped one last night. Actually, I don't know if I told you this, and I knocked out so quick. They do say they're like, take it a half hour only, like at max before bed, because
It'll
will fall asleep. Yeah, you will fall asleep and hit that pillow hard. But again, I love that it's non-habit forming. I love that I woke up this morning. I didn't feel groggy. As I told you, I went straight to the gym and clearly overdid it.
You felt great.
I did.
Oh, yeah. So creepers, make sure you go check out, if you are interested in Magic Mind, the sleep formulation, go to the description of this episode and you can check out, we'll have it linked. You can go on their website and check it out for yourself. And I know that the creepers that have already tried regular Magic Mind love it. So make sure to those creepers, go try the sleep formulation because it's wonderful as well. I came back from my Christmas break to a huge box and I'm excited to
I had two of them at my doorstep, and I was like, you can always tell when it's Magic Mind too, because they have this cute little like Magic Mind tape that they package up their shipments with, and I was like, it's time. I give that box a good shake, and I'm like,
it's
that's
time.
liquid.
Yeah.
That's liquid.
I need to start doing that. Shake the box. Oh man. All right, baby. With that, are you ready to get into the case of Jason Landry?
I am. I'm very nervous, but take it away, please.
Okay. Drink that tea. So let's get to it. The backwoods disappearance of Jason Landry. Jason Landry was born on July 29th, 1999 in Augusta, Georgia, to parents Kent and Lisa Landry. And I should mention, I dropped you a link. Creepers will have it ready for you on Reddit, but I dropped you, Silas, a link to the pictures for this case. But I think you'll see his family on the first page. But they moved to and lived in South Carolina before eventually moving to Austin, Texas, then Mississippi. And then by the time Jason would be attending college, where most of this case takes place, his parents had relocated to a small town called Missouri City, Texas. And this is where Jason grew up the majority of his life. So they moved around quite a bit before making their way to Texas finally. Now, Jason's father, Kent, is going to play a pretty important role in this case. And I just want to call out that he was a retired attorney, actually. So he does have some legal knowledge. But after he retired, he eventually became a pastor at their church in Missouri City. Jason's mom, Lisa, also worked, and she was an accountant. And from everything I read, Jason's family was a very loving one. He was the youngest of three. He had an older brother and sister, Kyle and Jessica, and they were all very close with one another. I think there's a picture of them as like little babies on that first page.
I know, it's really sweet. I also don't think I realized how recent this was. You said he was born in 1999?
Yeah, this is going to take place in 2020.
Oh, I had no idea it was that close. Whoa.
Yeah, we're very close. And I kind of debated. I was like, normally we don't, I feel like, cover things that are that recent, but there's something about this case that really has stuck with me that I just feel like I want to bring attention to. And I think it's kind of been long enough. And there, more updates have happened with it recently.
This might shock a lot of the creepers, but 2020 was a half a decade ago.
2020?
Was it
my
not?
God.
I was like, are we not in 2025?
I'm like, math, baby. Oh my God. Which shocked the creepers, shocked me. Jesus.
I mean, quite a bit of time, I guess, has passed, but this is definitely, I feel like the most recent that we ever cover. We usually cut it off around like 2016, 2017. We're nearing like a full, like close to 10 years where things have passed and kind of settled. But yeah, this seems like the most recent that we've talked about in a while.
Yeah. Well, it just feels, I feel like with 2020, that year especially, it just feels so like imprinted in all of us, you know, like we went through a lot during that time. So it feels closer, but my God, yeah, I guess it's been 5 years. Now, out of the three of his siblings, Jason was always said to be the most creative, and he had a particular interest in music and got into playing guitar and the trumpet in middle school and well into high school. And he was also said to have been more of a free spirit in comparison to his siblings. He wasn't really afraid to do his own thing, which I think can always be a little bit of a tougher bag when you grow up in a fairly religious household, which he did. And Jason ended up attending and graduating from Ridgepoint High School in Missouri City in 2018. And actually, he started college out at a small university called Sam Houston University, which is located in Huntsville, Texas. Have you ever heard of it?
No, I haven't heard of Missouri City either. Is it relatively small and kind of rural, or would you say it's just small and suburban.
Yes, a lot of this case actually takes place in like pretty small rural towns in Texas.
Okay.
Which doesn't help to add to the eeriness of it. But yeah, Sam Houston is a relatively small university, and it's located in Huntsville, Texas, which is about 2.5 hour drive from his hometown of Missouri City. And Sam Houston was actually not Jason's first choice in a college, and he wasn't necessarily happy about going there. But he really did try to make the best of it. And he eventually started dating somebody there and made a handful of friends. And like many freshmen, he ended up getting into partying and drinking that first year. And I think this, coupled with the fact that he didn't necessarily love going to Sam Houston as a college, may have been the catalyst for his grades to dip. And he ended his freshman year not doing too hot academically. And after discussing his dissatisfaction and his lack of good grades with his parents, he ultimately decided that transferring somewhere closer to home was going to help him get on more stable ground, which I totally understand. I think that's an admirable thing to do. And at first, he thought about going to a local community college that would have been very close to his home. But then he ended up pivoting and decided that he would be more fulfilled by pursuing his passion for music. Kind of weird. It's like the Sigrid Stevenson case a little bit, but music was something he willingly wanted to devote his time to, and it would keep him on track from sort of those distractions. So he ends up researching music programs that were in state, and he decides on Texas State University, which was located is located in San Marcos, Texas. Now, the logic to stay close to home kind of goes out of the window here, and I can totally understand why, given that this was such a prestigious program and he was excited about it. But I do just want to call out, it's 3 hours away from his hometown now of Missouri City. So we're going back off to school and even further away this time. And I imagine the stable ground he might have been able to achieve being super close to home is going to be thwarted by, going into another new environment that's even further away.
Totally.
Yeah. But what really sealed the deal was that Jason found out that TSU had this great audio engineering program. And ultimately, this was what made him decide to attend. And Jason ends up applying for transfer enrollment to TSU in the spring of his freshman year at Sam Houston, and he gets in. And so his first semester at TSU would begin in the fall of 2020. Now, unfortunately, just as Jason was beginning to turn his life around, as of course you just mentioned, the world had different plans. And just as classes were set to begin, TSU made a game time decision to shut down campus and move all classes to a remote setting because of COVID. And I think that this rocked Jason's world and a lot of other kids' worlds. And I think he was looking forward to living in an off-campus apartment of his own, pursuing something that he felt like was going to fulfill him more. And then suddenly everything was turned on its head. It was such a struggle, I think, for him, but for so many students across the country, having to make an adjustment to that sort of isolation, but especially people that didn't have established friend groups yet, like freshmen or somebody like Jason that's a transfer student. And I'm curious about what you think about this too, but I think there are just certain subjects where being in the classroom is paramount. And I think that music or theater is what we have experience in. But I think there's just such a sense of normalcy and routine to that kind of like in-person learning with something creative. And I can totally understand how having to go totally online would put somebody on unstable ground for their first few months of school.
Was he, even when the shutdown happened, he remained on campus, it sounds like? He was just kind of isolated to a dorm room.
Yeah. Well, not even a dorm. He lived in his own apartment off campus.
Oh,
yeah.
I really feel for him because I feel like I understand this story very well. Not that we experienced this because we weren't in college, but I remember hearing from people who were in school at the time, and I guess my sister included, just how difficult that was to transition into online and have no real connection with the people that you're seeing other than just like the start and stop of a Zoom call. And especially when, like, kind of like what you were hinting at, his friends that maybe he had from his hometown who have gone off to other schools, maybe they went out of state, they are establishing those groups, or it's just a proximity thing where they're like, well, I'm going to be on a FaceTime call with this person or that person, or we have like an outdoor like COVID meeting or something. that takes up time where suddenly he has nobody to talk to. So the isolation I can completely understand.
Yeah, and I mean, my God, especially during like a pandemic with no, from what I read, I mean, his friend group was pretty small that he had at TSU in those first couple of months. So that, coupled with the fact that before he got to school, there were problems that were already afoot because according to his father, Kent, his parents had noticed something changing with Jason when he first got to TSU. He apparently would call home and he often sounded high to them. And his parents had that paternal instinct that he was getting back into drinking a lot, smoking pot, and sort of self-medicating during this isolation. And one silver lining was that Jason, I think, recognized this and he decided to go ahead and get a job at a Jimmy John's that was on the TSU campus nearby, because he had previously worked at a Jimmy John's in his hometown. So this was probably grounding, and it allowed him to save up some money during the fall while he waited for classes to start in person again. Now we're going to fast forward to December of that year. So Jason has completed his first semester. Finals were over, and like so many of us post finals, I'm sure you can relate to this. There's a sense of relief heading back home to spend holiday break with your family. I mean, personally,
I don't even know how he would have done finals because he was in a music program. So
I know.
I'm just curious, like how they would have conducted it. Clearly, it happened somehow over like Zoom or something of the like.
Yeah.
But I just from hearing the horror stories from like the acting department back at my school of like how their final semesters were going. It was horrible. Like it was just a horrible, like non-learning experience for everybody.
Yeah, I guess maybe because he was audio engineering or on that track, maybe it was a little bit easier. But yeah, my God, can you imagine doing like vocal adjudications over Zoom?
I was thinking of like music juries. Like, you would like normally go in and have to play in front of the faculty or something, or like acting finals. That's what was in my mind. And I'm like, how did any of that happen?
I know. I have absolutely no idea how he did it, but finals were over and he was so excited to go back home and just spend some time with his family. And I always just think about when I was coming back home, I was like, all right, whatever bad grades I just made, there's nothing I can do about it. So there's just like that sense of relief. And Jason was also in communication with his older brother, Kyle, that week. And Kyle, whom everything I saw in the research Jason looked up to a lot, had told him that he was going to be coming home from Texas A&M University the same week that Jason was going to be getting home. So that was also adding to some of the excitement. And I think that hanging out with his parents and his sister and just reestablishing that sense of comfort was going to be great for him. And both of his parents stated that they didn't know exactly what day they were to expect Jason or Kyle, but both boys had indicated that at some point they were coming home the week of December 13th, which was a Sunday. And Jason had a lot of friends from high school in Missouri City. And through texting with them, he discovered that a big party was going to happen when everybody was going to be back home. I can totally relate to that too. I don't know if you experienced this, but like those first couple of Thanksgivings and Christmases when you come back from having been spread out at different colleges, those can be really fun. And I can understand the like excitement of wanting to get home and get back to like your old high school friends. But
it's just spelling a sinister story for me because it is reminding me of Brandon Swanson, like you said.
It's bizarro parallels, like strap in. So this party wasn't really supposed to be like a real rager or anything. I think it was more just like a small get together at somebody's house where they were going to be playing video games. Apparently Jason loved Call of Duty, maybe drink, maybe smoke a little bit of weed, but nothing crazy. Now, I think it's really important to point this out, but Jason had originally planned to stay at his apartment on the night of December 13th, which was a Sunday night. And
his apartment back like near campus.
Yes, his off-campus apartment. And then he was going to drive home the next day on the 14th. But at some point late in the night, he changed his mind. He heard that his friends were going to be meeting up that Sunday night. And maybe he was experiencing a little bit of FOMO, but he decided last minute to leave and drive up that night. And he had sent messages.
Weird.
It gets weirder. He had sent messages that indicated he was supposed to start driving at around 8 o'clock that night. But for some reason, he ended up not leaving until closer to 11, which, remember, it takes him about 3 hours to get home.
I was going to say, what is if he's like going to meet up with them? Would they even still be like hanging? Because he'd get there at like 2 or 3 in the morning.
I know. Oh, I was like at 2 a.m., I guess. I can imagine, I guess, if you're like staying up playing video games all night, maybe people are hanging out. But I mean, I find that really odd to want to make a drive when I like just thinking about when I was that young. I mean, even now, I don't think I would want to start a 3-hour trek at 11 p.m. in the dark.
No, I mean, traffic would be, I'm trying to like put myself in his shoes where I'm like,
Yeah.
how would you justify that as like a college student where you're like, okay, I've like wasted too much time. I've like pissed away enough time at 8 p.m. So like, I'm not going to get to hang out with them. But on the plus side, if I do leave tonight, I'm already packed. So it's going to be annoying to have to unpack and spend like another night here. And there's going to be less traffic getting back. So maybe the trip will be like 2.5 hours instead of 3.
Yeah. I mean, that was the only thing
I'm playing hard devil's advocate.
I know.
Hard.
I know. But you can feel that something about it is not right. Something about it doesn't feel right. Now, at approximately 10:55 p.m., Jason begins his trek home. And we know this because of the data built into the Waze navigation app that Jason was using. And I think I have sort of like a map, I think on page 2, as we kind of go through this next part of the case, it'll kind of show you his trail.
Oh, yeah. I've been very well behaved. I haven't gone down to the second page
No,
yet.
baby. Go ahead. I mean, there's... I go ahead. I think maybe the last page, there's some stuff I don't want you to look at just yet.
I won't.
Yeah, so we know this from the Waze navigation app. And then at 11:05, Jason entered Caldwell County heading south on Texas Highway 80. And he continues until he enters another little small town called Martindale, Texas at around 11:11 p.m. It's after 11:11 that we know Jason started passing through multiple other small towns that included Fentress, Prairie Lee, and then Stairtown, Texas.
Why is he taking back roads? What is that about?
Well, I guess with the Waze app, they kind of take you, I guess, on the fastest way to get home. And sometimes you can do like turn off, like tollways or whatever. So I don't know. I imagine maybe that's what he was doing. But he eventually made his way down to Lulling, Texas at around 11:25 p.m. And this is super important because he was about to enter onto Interstate 10, which is the highway that would take him all the way back to his parents' house. He just needed to pass through a couple of small towns in order to make it there. And just so you get a complete visual picture, Jason was driving a tannish gray Nissan Altima, which you'll see a couple of pictures of also, I think, on page 2. But it's also at this time that police discovered the Waze app quits, and Jason started using the Snapchat app, which I am amazed that they were able to discover that via phone data, that they can literally see like when the app shut down and he went into another one. I don't even know the science behind that, but it's important.
Is that like an activity log? Do we have that? I'm making this up, but I'm like, do we have an activity log on our phones?
I have no idea what that would be, how they would tap into that, but I guess so. Or like maybe even just like the amount of time. Checking it right now. I know.
I was like, am I being tracked?
It's truly, I mean, I guess it is some sort of tracking, but the fact that they were able to pinpoint that they knew that, it just kind of shocked me when I was.
Yeah, but really helpful though. Like,
it was super helpful. And because at this time, like right when he opened the Snapchat app, it was when he was supposed to be making a turn to get onto Interstate 10. And sadly, Jason would never make it onto the interstate, nor would he make it home. That Snapchat notification, whether it ended up shutting the Waze app off or if Jason deliberately exited out of it, caused him to miss his turn onto a street called Magnolia Avenue, which was basically the conduit that would put Jason onto his path home. And instead, he drives onto a street called East Austin Street. And here is where police get really tripped out. Jason starts taking several wrong turns, one of which eventually puts him on a road called Spruce Ave, which then led him to Salt Flat Road. And Salt Flat Road is where much of our investigation is going to take place. So I know I just threw out about 18 different small towns and 30 back roads, but remember.
No, but I'm like zeroed into it though. Do you think he was lost? Like, I don't know if they can tell from like all the turns that he was taking, but do you think that maybe he was initially lost because he had accidentally closed out of the Waze app because he opened a snap, and then he was like, oh, I missed my turn. Let me see if I can like turn it around. Or maybe was it just like nonsensical, the turns he was taking?
I just want to get to.
You
I'm
just
like,
scared me. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, because I thought that he was lost, and then I think by the end you're going to have a lot to work with in terms of like determining if it was sort of a deliberate decision or not. I do think it could have started out as making a wrong turn, but I think there's so much more that went into it that you need to have like a full, and the creepers need like a full
Fair.
like grasp of. But yes, I do think he was at the beginning. And at this point, Jason has been traveling north for not an insignificant amount of time. He's been traveling about 20 minutes in the wrong direction, and he should have been headed east. And there's no history of the Waze app ever turning back on. And that made me wonder, since he had only done this trip twice before, I read that he had done it to go back to his parents. He had gone back in the fall a couple of times. Did he not have enough service to get the Waze back on?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Right. Or did he deliberately choose not to put it back on, which I think kind of, hints at what the question you're asking. And I mean, I would be pretty freaked out driving on backwoods roads late at night in pretty unfamiliar territory, no matter what. Even if I did get a Snapchat notification, I probably would have turned my navigation back on. But I guess it's possible that he wouldn't have noticed he was on the wrong path if he hadn't done this drive many times. But still, I just wonder why he didn't turn it back on for nothing else, because of just how late it was and how creepy these roads were. Now, that misturn, the one that he should have taken down Magnolia Avenue, is something that investigators have also tried to dissect and call into question. The reason being is because there's a very large sign at that road that says Interstate 10 this way, and it's at a stoplight where Magnolia Avenue was and where Jason would have had to pass through in order to get to Salt Flat Road. So maybe he was driving too fast if the light was totally green and he just passed the sign, but police have called it into question because it would have been really bizarre had he been stopped at a red, and that sign is apparently huge, and he just didn't take the correct turn. It might paint a totally different picture. So let's just pause there, because an hour later from this, everything is about to change. But I just want to get your first couple of thoughts, and you've kind of hinted a little bit at like wondering if maybe he was lost or something, but what initial feelings are you getting about the night?
It's tough to say, to be honest. There's a few different directions I'm going, and I can't tell which of it is like devil's advocate and which of it is me like having a gut instinct about any of it. But I can speak from my own experience. I'm not the best driver, and I do miss signs, like massive signs, especially like at night. No shot. If I don't have a navigation system or if it's turned off, I will miss that turn. I will go into like the backwoods of a town and be like, oh, damn. And then I'm like spiraling out, taking a bunch of different turns. So I'm trying to play devil's advocate from my own experience to be like, is it possible he was lost and then he started to freak out because he's like, I missed the turn. I was zoning out. I'm all alone. Yeah. It's late and I have no service in wherever the hell I am. And then all of a sudden he's freaking out on these back roads. Or it's the other side of this where he's making a decision in that moment to go off on those roads for whatever reason. But I'm actually very curious about the Snapchat and the closing of the app, because opening another app, I'm just going to say this, and I'm sure you will get to something, but I'm just going to say it for the creepers. You have to deliberately close out an app usually when you open another app. Like if Waze stopped and one app started, I think he would have had to stop the navigation and then open Snapchat, which tells me possibly another story. Was this town his destination? Was he opening a Snap because he was talking to somebody on Snap, which is something that you do if you're trying to keep a conversation down low, not necessarily because it's something gay or like it could be down low in that way, but you're talking to somebody who you don't want there to be a written record of you talking.
You just gave me full body chills, and I'm not trying to be dramatic about that. Creepers like truly just kind of tapped into something that I don't even think I had particularly thought about. I mean, it does tie into one of the theories here, but I sort of have kind of been leaning in the direction of like, could this be, and we'll get to it, but like, was he going through something at school and maybe was like disoriented? But I did not even take into account the Snapchat of it all. I kind of was just thinking like, oh, maybe like a college friend or his buddies at her home were like sending him things. I did not even think about, because I haven't been on it for so long, that Snapchat
we may not even know. Like there may be no record of that, and maybe that was the intention. You know, to like who was that message from? Was it a photo? Right. Was it like an actual written message? Was he going to this town all along? And for what reason? Who would he know there? Why would he know somebody there? It just seemed, it could be coincidence, but it stuck out to me initially when you said it. I was like, navigation shuts off, which tells me he knows where he's at, or he's already in the town he's supposed to be in. Snapchat opens. I'm here.
I feel like you're transferring that like tearing up thing to me. Like I truly, until this moment, had not even thought about that with this case. Like I just kind of forgot that, especially in 2020 and a college kid, how much Snapchat was used for
even
like,
to this day. It's still
and this day, kind of like not. I mean, sometimes it's, you know, secret CD kind of stuff. Like not always, but I mean, definitely in the terms of this case, it could have been something that he was wanting to hide.
Predominantly used for down low hookups, from what I know, and also used for picking up drugs.
Okay, well, keep that in mind as we unpack the theories, because I want to come back to that, especially in regards to like one of the theories, because I think you just kind of hit the nail on the head with something. But
I could be totally off too. Like there might be creepers who are like, "Girl, pack it up." Like enough with the conspiracies.
Well, before you pack it up, let's unpack how they discovered his car, because I think that this also is like the big meat of when we go into the theories. The discovery of the car paints such a picture. So a lulling local volunteer fireman is driving down, I'll just imagine this, driving down Salt Flat Road, and he spots something really odd in the dark. A car with its headlights on that appears to have been crashed into a tree and abandoned in a ditch. And the fireman decides to investigate, and as he approaches, he realizes that no one is there. The driver, Jason, is nowhere to be found. And I don't know if you have that picture. I think it's on page 2 of Salt Flat Road, but it's an extremely rural backroads area. It's not paved. It's gravelly and honestly downright creepy. And I cannot imagine just coming up on that scene this late at around 12:30. And the fireman deduces that the car had probably fishtailed on the shoulder of the road. So basically just the back tires had spun out of control and gone rogue. And
because there's damage on the back and the front from what it looks like.
Yeah. But they thought from the tire tracks that the back tires had like spun out, and he had tried to overcorrect, which caused him to crash into this tree as well as a barbed wire fence on the opposite side of the road. So basically he had crashed into the fence and then during the overcorrection zigzagged back towards the tree. And the fireman also noticed a couple of other odd details. The key was still in the ignition and the passenger door was locked. So he promptly calls 911, and I've listened to the call, and it takes a while for dispatch to get out there. And there was lots of back and forth about who's going to go out to find the car, which is, I mean, we're in rural Texas, very county.
What else is new?
Like, I know.
Tell me something I don't know.
Right. But when they do get to Jason's car, they notice all the same things the fireman noticed and a whole lot more. It's about to get way, way stranger. So they realize that all of his belongings are outside of the car and strewn about. His backpack, his clothing, and shoes were spread out all over the road.
What?
And inside of that backpack, they found marijuana. And an officer said that there was a cup in the car that smelled like alcohol. And the reason I know this is because the actual body cam footage has since been released a couple of years ago. And it's honestly infuriating. I shouldn't be surprised, and neither should you, county, but it's infuriating how nonchalantly they sort of treat it. I mean, they literally say, you can hear the officer say on the call, or on the body cam, he's like, oh, this has got to just be a college kid. And he's like doing it as he's pulling the joints out of the little package they were in, which it wasn't like a crazy amount of weed. It was, a couple of joints, which I could expect a college kid to have. But they briefly try to go find Jason on foot. They travel up and down Salt Flat Road, but they discover nothing. They also look, this is really creepy. Creepers, if you want to go, I can link also the video if you want to watch it in full. But there is an abandoned house that's off the side of the road.
This
and they
is Brandon Swanson.
It really is. It's
can I tell you something? It's
weird.
Brandon Swanson and it's Mara Murray.
It's yes.
Like,
yes.
Actually.
Yes. Fully. It's both of those. It's so I just have chills the entire time we're covering this because I feel like I know
now.
this
I'm
case.
tearing up as we speak.
I know.
Like it's starting to happen.
Well, you'll tear up if you go watch that footage because like the officer is literally like with a flashlight, Blair Witch Project style, like going into this abandoned house trying to find him, or the driver. They didn't know it was Jason at the time, but there's no sign of him in that house. And officers go and they look up the registration of the vehicle, which was under Kent, his father's name. So they ended up getting in contact with his parents about an hour later, right at around 1:30 a.m. And his parents are, of course, freaking out. And his dad ends up jumping in the car without hesitation and drives straight to Jason's location that he had on Find My Friends. And officers mentioned to Kent that when they found the car, they had found a black backpack about 100 feet away from it, which included his wallet, some substances, and Kent's thinking, oh my God, well, I imagine there's going to be an investigation still going on when I get there at around, just a couple of hours later. To his shock, when he arrives to Jason's location at around 5 a.m., police had not only left his stuff everywhere, all over the road, but nobody is out looking for him anymore. And there's actually footage that Kent shot on his phone that you can watch. But when he gets there, he's literally the only person out there. And he's just looking at his son's stuff all over the road.
Like, now that's getting me upset. That's just imagine that from the perspective of like a father going out, after hearing that your son's car has been found crashed, all of his stuff is like strewn about and he's missing. And you're just out there in the dark at 5 a.m. with your phone taking footage looking for him and nobody's like, that's insane.
It's awful. I'm actually going to send you in just a second, like it's a very quick snippet of, because his dad also released the footage that he took a couple of years later, but it's one of the most eerie visuals that I've ever seen in a case. Like him, because like the sun is starting to rise just a little bit in some of the videos, and like him just standing on this one back road, like so rural, nothing is around, just like his son's t-shirt, underwear, sandals, and he's just like, this is all Jason's. And it's like
clothes he had packed up for coming home, basically.
Clothes he had packed up for coming home, but the clothes he was wearing when he was driving.
Oh, I missed that.
Well, I haven't mentioned it yet, but he completely stripped before he left the car, which adds a whole nother layer to this.
What are you telling me on this day?
I know. But before we get to that, I'm sure that you maybe you had clocked like, wait, how does he have Jason's location? What happened with the phone if we're able to collect data on it and like the Waze app and Snapchat and all that stuff? Well, the phone wouldn't be discovered until later. It had apparently been lodged in between the center console and the driver's seat. So Jason had probably dropped it, and whether he was disoriented or maybe he was high or scared or it fell out of his pocket, he clearly wasn't able to figure out where his phone was before he went on foot, which that thought alone is just so sad to me if he had been looking for it, because had he had it, I do think this could have turned out a whole lot differently, assuming that he wanted to have it with him. But back to county police for a second. They had essentially just called the parents. Then they didn't do anything further after that. They just like put some of his stuff, like kicked it back into closer to the middle of the road and not on the sides. Didn't file a missing persons report or anything, which of course, same old trope. There's always that 24-hour grace period. But I was just so shocked to read that. And like you were saying, it just gets me so upset because it's a 21-year-old kid that has crashed his car on the side of the road. He's obviously got to be in danger. And the weather outside was cold. He's obviously outside of the vehicle and missing. And I'm just going to send you a clip of the scene that I kind of mentioned of when his dad does get there, just because I think it paints a certain type of picture. But let me just drop it real quick. There might be an ad that plays at the beginning, but
that's okay. We'll watch it together, creepers. We'll put this all up on Reddit as well. Don't you worry. Like if you want to follow along with the visuals or you want to watch these clips, we'll make sure that you have access to it.
Oh God.
And there is an ad. It's for a light show.
Oh God, a light show.
It's like a light installation. It's a touring light installation. All right, let's see. I'm just going to describe what I'm watching. Yeah.
It's super quick, but
I'm seeing his flip-flops on a rural road. His dad's walking. His t-shirt he's picking up. I think that was all of it, unless there's another ad that like
no. I mean, that's just super quick because the other video, and I'll also post this on Reddit, it's a lot longer, and his dad's like walking down the road going, this is Jason's and this is Jason's. But just so you get like the full feeling of that scene, it's just so eerie and sad just to see his stuff everywhere. And he ends up finding Jason's socks. He finds his sandals. He finds his watch, a t-shirt, his shorts. And this is really bizarre, his underwear, which had blood markings within the waistband. And the thought here was that since the blood was pretty specifically on just his underwear, and there actually was also a little bit on his shorts, that maybe he had stripped and then tried in the dark to climb that barbed wire fence and gotten stuck. That's what I was thinking, and what a lot of the research I read, what other people think. But let's also talk about why he had taken off or would have taken off all of his clothes and left everything behind the way that he did. So it was very cold this night. It was about 36 degrees and the wind
near freezing. Jesus.
Near freezing. And the wind was supposedly immense. And with that wind chill, it would have felt as cold as 19 degrees. So the undressing indicates to me that like paradoxical undressing effect that I think we've talked about pretty recently. But the idea that he was so
point. I wasn't thinking
cold.
of that. That's a good point.
Well, I guess his heat wasn't working in the car, or that he just felt so cold that his skin ended up feeling like it was on fire and he was maybe starting to experience early hypothermia. I think maybe that was happening, but I don't know how you feel. All of the belongings being everywhere, is that like a state of panic or maybe mania? I'm curious what you think.
To me, this is all working under the assumption that he was alone at the time of the crash and that there wasn't somebody tailing him or that he was running from someone. And I can only speak, this is not a staple, but there are some instances with drug deals or rival gangs or something similar to that going wrong where humiliation is a very large part of it, where you are made to strip your clothes then and there or perform something to humiliate yourself. And the only reason I keep referencing that is because you mentioned he had weed in the car. That's not shocking to me. You mentioned he might have been drinking and driving. That doesn't shock me. The backpack you mentioned was found with substances in it. And I don't know if those have ever been publicly disclosed or not, but that's pushing me even further into this narrative. I'm like, is this somehow drug related or a pickup related thing?
I think you're going to feel hopefully even more clarity about that when I reveal some of the things that came out after they did their initial investigation, and then some pretty dark details that came out a couple of years later. But I do think that there could have been, it's never been confirmed, but I do think you're on the right track. I do think there could have been something maybe drug related here. That yeah, I think you're definitely on the right track.
Like
but
either he was forced to strip or I mean, there's a whole other, I won't get pushed too far into the theories now, but like my mind is truly spinning with like so many different directions this could have gone in. I'm just mostly shocked at the lack of police involvement from the get-go, which we've talked about 1,000,001 times. It's not entirely surprising, but it is so lackluster, their involvement, that it's either just horrific negligence on the part of the police, or is there another story here where the police are somewhat involved or tied to it in some way?
Well, I was just shocked. I mean, if you watch the body cam footage, I'm really not coloring it with my own thoughts. Like, you hear the officer say like, oh, it's probably just some college kid. And he's literally pulling the joints out and like tossing them. Like he's like tossing them back in. Like he's completely enthused about the prospect of trying to discover anything more.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm actually shocked their body cams were still on, which, I mean, I guess that pushes it further out of the possibility of police being maybe connected to something nefarious. But again, small towns, everybody knows somebody.
It's true. Now, the following day, they end up towing Jason's Altima to an impound lot, and they examine the damage more in depth. And you can see in that picture, I think on page 2 as well, maybe, or it might be page 3. But there's a picture of his car, and it's really badly banged up in the front and on the side. And the rear window is smashed out, which was thought to be from the crash and not from Jason trying to like break out or anything. And I don't know why this bothers me so much, but when they examined the vehicle further, they also found his toiletry items. So clearly he was headed home, or so I would think. They found a baseball hat. And they actually, this is just a weird, odd detail, but they found a cup with a dead betta fish inside of it. I guess he needed to like bring home his pet betta fish or else it was going to die while he was gone over break. But also indicates to me that he was very clearly planning to be home for a certain amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
There was also some gaming equipment and his laptop. And once they discovered the phone and the laptop, Kent and Lisa Landry asked police, please analyze this. And I thought, again, county, I should have not thought that this was weird, but they were basically just going to give all the stuff back to the parents and not take another look at it. So they had to literally ask police to please do a deep dive into the laptop and the phone. And another odd detail, no blood.
At a certain point, if you can afford it, like, and police are giving it back to you, take it to a private eye.
Yeah.
Make sure
totally.
that the information you're getting is credible and that nobody's messing with anything.
Totally. There was no blood found inside of the car, so he wasn't severely injured or anything. Well, I guess, listen, you could definitely, do some head damage or something like that, but he wasn't.
Yeah, there was no like laceration on his body.
Right.
He was bleeding in the car, but he did sustain some kind of injury outside of the car.
Yes, and there was just the blood that was on the band of his underwear and some inside of his shorts. But yeah, no blood in the car. And I can't imagine waking up to this, but I believe that the parents didn't want to alarm Jason's other two siblings in the middle of the night. So they sent them texts about what was going on. And his older brother, Kyle, who I mentioned earlier, was also going to be coming home that weekend or week. And he woke up to all of these texts from his mom and his dad explaining that something terrible had happened to Jason. And Kyle immediately called and he said, I just feel like I need to be there and lulling with you guys while they tried to locate him. And Kyle described that at this point, his parents were just hoping and praying that maybe Jason had hitched a ride back to his apartment at TSU. And even at one point, they had hoped that he maybe in the middle of the night had hitched a ride and found a way to get to his brother to Kyle's at Texas A&M. But none of them at this point knew what was happening because obviously those two situations were not true.
Mm-hmm.
So after their search of the car, the Caldwell County Sheriff's Department ends up doing the most county of county things and telling the family that this kind of scenario happens all the time. They'll find abandoned cars on the side of the road and that usually the driver comes back after a few days later to retrieve the car.
I see the approach they're taking, which is like what I thought, why I mentioned Mara Murray, where like maybe he was drinking and driving, crashed the car, panicked, and because knew I'm going to have to get the car towed, but also I've got all this stuff in the car. Like I've got to get out of here. Tries to hop the barbed wire fence, cuts his waist up, and just runs into some rural farmland. But then where does the story go from there?
Right.
Why did he strip?
I couldn't believe that I guess I'm being too precious about like the age of Jason, but I just would think, even if it's a college kid, but my God, like clearly he's in danger. It's just crazy to me that they were like, he'll come back for the car. Like when you were in college, I don't know. I don't know if I would, maybe I would abandon the car, but I don't know. I feel like I would have definitely
to come back sometime. Like
contact with somebody, or I would have tried.
Well, he left all his belongings there. That's the thing. Like it sounds like his phone slipped between the center console and the driver's seat, so he didn't have access to his phone. Sounds like he left his wallet behind. So you can only hang out in like the rural farmland for so long before somebody's going to get to you, or you're going to have to go back to home base, which is your car.
Yeah. Oh God. Now, they did let the family know that they would be speaking with Jason's friend to try and figure out his whereabouts that night. And after that first full day, after discovering Jason's car and belongings, police are focusing on his phone after the parents basically begged them to. And they're trying to retrieve as much information as they can, either by tapping his socials like Snapchat or Instagram. But that first day, they didn't discover much of anything. And sadly, it was supposed to be even colder that next night. By December 16th, they get police to release a team of search dogs around the crash site, and the dogs end up leading police to a nearby pond. So could Jason have possibly hit his head during the crash and then wandered off and fallen into this pond? Sure. And they end up engaging a dive team called the Texas EquiSearch. And this is actually really interesting. Texas EquiSearch is an organization that was created by a father who had lost his daughter to a murder in the 80s in Texas. And they're apparently a wonderful organization, but they end up doing a search and they totally drain the pond. Nothing.
Whoa.
Yeah. I don't think it was a huge pond by any means, but I mean, yeah, for them to go do that is.
I think I just assumed that they would be diving. I had no idea that they would drain it, but that's
drained
fantastic.
It. Yeah, and nothing. And the search continues for another 9 days.
Sorry.
No, what'd you say?
I said sorry to those fish.
Sorry to those fish, baby. I know.
It's all for the cause.
It's all for the cause. There's enough fish in the world. The search continues for another 9 days, and helicopters, more dogs, drone cameras, volunteers, everything that was available to try and find Jason was used. But with each passing day, his family is getting closer and closer to the realization that maybe Jason is no longer alive. Now, let's talk about Lulling for a second, because if this was where Jason was last on foot, I think it helps to talk about the environment that he would have been experiencing. And from what I've read, Lulling really is the type of town that is just a stop through for drivers. It is not the type of town where Jason would want to get out and explore on foot, certainly not in the middle of the night, especially if you were trying to find help. And I did read that some of the theories, and you've kind of already hit on this, but that Lulling might have been a pretty heavy drug trafficking town. And
I knew it. I swear to God, I could sense it.
I know. And even in the body cam footage, this is so, of course, you picked up on this, but in the body cam footage, one of the officers says, well, maybe he's a delivery boy, which, of course, I take to mean a drug dealer or a drug mule. And Lulling is not super far away from the border, so it's possible that there could be, something else going on there. But there are others that believe that the intersection where Jason was supposed to be, to take that right that would have gotten him onto the interstate, that he might have possibly been carjacked there. And theoretically, I guess his attackers could have disposed of his body after killing him. But in my mind, I'm thinking that just doesn't explain the crash, unless Jason was still driving and maybe he swerved to try to escape them, and then they're in the car with him maybe at some point. But
or just tailing him. I mean, if somebody's trying to I was also curious about the state of the car, and maybe this was mentioned somewhere, maybe it wasn't, but I wonder what actually did make him crash. Either it was his speed on a rural road and he just lost control, or something in my mind kept saying a spike strip for some reason. I kept feeling
interesting.
Tires popped, back tires popped, spike strip, loses control, fishtails, gets out of the car, starts running or tries to take his stuff with him, but he's dropping it and it's dark. He lost his phone. He has got to get over the barbed wire fence. I just keep seeing that replaying in my mind.
Yeah, that's a spike strip you're saying from somebody that wanted to carjack him or do something
on those back roads. I mean, if they are trying to carjack, sometimes the easiest way to stop a car is not necessarily with a gun, but to blow out their tires. So they actually pull over and think, oh, I got a flat or two flats. I've got to get out and inspect it. And then somebody comes out of the woods with a gun.
Oh my God. Can you imagine that, being that young? And
my sister and I on our road trip, we specifically avoided back roads because we got a bad gut feeling. I was like, that's the type of road where somebody's going to throw out a spike strip.
Yeah.
I think that's what they're called, by the way. I think they're called spike strips.
They are. Those things with the little nails.
Yeah. Police even use them too to try to slow down car chases. But I feel like that would have been obvious if they would have mentioned it if they inspected the car and they were the back tires were clearly somebody popped them.
Yeah, I don't think it was. I think it was probably, I don't know exactly what they determined, but I think it was probably he was going way too fast.
Really?
And even it could have possibly been, I don't know how icy the roads could have been or something, maybe from previous nights. I don't think it was freezing level that night, but it could have just been, I don't know. I honestly don't know. But I think from what I know about this case, I could see him speeding. That would make a lot of sense to me. And just the way
it makes sense to me too.
Tracks looked and how hard he hit that fence, it looked like he was going pretty fast.
I guess the question is, was he just speeding for the sake of speeding because he was panicking, or was somebody after him?
Exactly. Well, that's the next theory. Another theory was that Jason could have been picked up by somebody with ill intentions after he crashed his car, which would have been, of course, an opportunistic abduction, which is pretty rare. But I just keep coming back to Jason's belongings being found everywhere and all of his clothes being off, that, indicating that he, of course, stripped. And for a second, I wondered, what if that clothing wasn't his, but his father, A, confirmed that it was his, but B, we'd come to discover video footage later that showed Jason in this clothing just mere hours before he disappeared. And that footage I want to talk about in depth because I think it's really important to this case. But before I do, just another theory. Could he have crashed and then just gone unconscious in the car? And then later, maybe at around midnight before the car is discovered at 12:31, he has come to and he's realized just how cold it was outside. And maybe the heat stopped working when he crashed the car. I'm not sure, but he started stripping outside of the car to get warmer. And then maybe he was starting to suffer being so cold that he did what is called, I was reading about it, it's called terminal burrowing, which is sort of like at the very end of hypothermia. When you feel like you're about to die, you try to like burrow somewhere and you seek shelter. So he could have left the vehicle, taken off all of his clothes, and then just like taken off running in either the wild or down the road to try and find some shelter. But the only thing is, for me, I still just don't understand how he totally didn't think to find his phone before going anywhere. And I mean, maybe he was just so cold.
Or burrow in the car. I mean, yeah. But I guess maybe it's like nonsensical. Like when you're that cold, your mind is like not really thinking clearly.
Yeah. Well, and that's a good point, because I was going to say, I mean, if I was in the right state of mind, I would think to myself, I cannot leave until I find my phone so I can call somebody, call police, or navigate myself to, another gas station or somewhere before doing anything else. But yeah, it's very true. I mean, his brain capacity could have been severely, not only hypothermia, but crashing his freaking car. I mean, he could have been really out of whack. But there's also a more sinister theory here that Jason was perhaps unhappy and basically staged his own disappearance to run away and start a new life. Now, this doesn't necessarily track for me because I think A, he was genuinely so excited to go home and hang out with his friends. B, he had that gaming console in his car, which to me seems like his plans were pretty definitive, even if it was, just in his mind. And C, he had his toiletry bag with him, which to me indicates that he was planning to stay the night somewhere, either at his parents' or his friends'. But I want to get your thoughts about where you're leaning, what theory kind of makes the most sense for you thus far.
I think you really spelled it out pretty well, actually, with the whole hypothermia component, which I don't think I was considering before. But you made me realize, like, it's very possible that he had crashed that car and then was unconscious for a period of time. I'm curious of when, because he did call 911 to report the crash. When that 911 call came in, I guess, how late after the fact that he was like driving around, like how much time do they think might have elapsed maybe between the crash to the 911 call? Because if he called immediately, then we're totally, this whole like crash hypothermia unconscious theory is like out the window for me.
Yeah.
But if not, then there's something there.
It was a full hour from when he crashed the car until he crashed the car, they think right at around like 11:25. And then that volunteer firefighter called at 12:30. So it was a full hour. That's something.
It was the firefighter who called 911.
Yeah, no, Jason. Who did you think called?
I thought Jason had called 911 himself.
No. Jason did not call.
He never called 911.
No. Jason
so we have no idea. Okay, gotcha.
We have no idea what Jason was doing during.
Gotcha.
Like we literally, the only semblance of like where he was comes from the Waze and the Snapchat and like phone data. We have no idea. He didn't contact anybody.
Was there any other data they ever like picked apart? It sounds like their family kind of, I don't know, like hit like a brick wall with what could be extrapolated from the data from the phone, because they knew about the Waze shutting off. They knew about the Snapchat opening. I feel like the messages would have been extremely important, or like any of the after data or usage on the phone if they could pull something from that. But it sounds like they didn't know.
Well, there is one big piece that I was about to launch into, but
oh my God.
I mean, to me, when I got to this part, I was like, okay, something darker is happening here. And I think that this is going to kind of, it's either going to totally change how you feel or, yeah. So
creepers are gripping their seats with me right now.
Yeah. So new information came out in January of 2022 that sheds a lot more light on this case, despite his parents' wishes. And I totally understand why. But FaceTime footage of Jason with a friend from just a couple of hours before he left town showed him talking and rolling joints for about 30 minutes. And there's no audio on this video. But according to the friend, he had started recording because Jason was speaking about a bunch of stuff that didn't make any sense. Very nonsensical chatter. and he wanted to show him later to see if he remembered, which, how did it not cross the friend's mind at this point to tell him, hey, dude, probably best if you don't drive right now. But
Yeah.
I'm not going to blame a college kid. You know, we all do silly things with our friends. But this friend claimed that that Jason was talking about having a spiritual awakening and opening up his third eye. This was later supported by search history mere hours before Jason crashed that included Googling spiritual enlightenment practices, how to combine certain strains of marijuana. And this one is so unnerving to me. How long can you go in the wilderness? Because that indicates to me that he may have crashed the car intentionally, or he just wanted to get lost, which is so heartbreaking. Now, and I think I have a screenshot of, I realize I probably shouldn't have put it on the first page, but there's a screenshot of that FaceTime call that's on that first page of the doc.
Yeah, I was wondering how that was going to play into this. I thought it was just like an extra picture of him for some reason. I didn't realize this was, God, that is so chilling to know that is from the night that he went missing.
From the night. So that t-shirt you see him in, that's the same one that they like found on the road and everything. Now there was one pretty major break in July of 2022. So do you see the photo on the last page? And it kind of looks like a young man on an incubator in a hospital.
Yeah.
So that photo was released by NYPD on Twitter, stating that they needed help identifying this young man who was found unconscious and unresponsive in the Bronx. And it circulated and made its way back to Jason's family online. And they immediately contacted authorities because it looks a lot like Jason. The Texas Attorney General's office contacted NYPD, but after further investigation, they concluded that it was not Jason, which again is super heartbreaking. But as
whatever
of today,
happened to him? Just curious. Did he make it out of it?
Yeah, he made it out of it. I think they got him care and they identified the young man. I think they actually got him back to his family. But he had been like out on the streets and
just like a false lead where they were
totally false lead. But it was so sad. I remember there was this quote from his parents where they were like talking about how they were busy doing something else. And then when they got the notification, they like put their phones down and immediately got their computer out so they could like blow up the image. And they thought for sure that it was him.
It looks a lot like him.
It really does. Like his same like hair coloring and like face coloring. But to see that photo, I can't imagine as a parent, like so scary, but you would hope like, oh my God, at least he's in a hospital or something. But anyways, turns out not to be Jason. And as of today, there have been no further updates. Billboards were posted in Lulling, but have since been taken down. And the family fights tirelessly for more answers. And they have a very supportive community back in Missouri City, as well as their faith, which keeps them going and keeps their hope alive. But as of today, this is all that is known about the disappearance of Jason Landry. And I know that we have a lot of Texas creepers. So I did just want to mention, if you do know anything about Jason, or if you come across anybody that does, you are encouraged to call, I don't know if I should be encouraging this, but Caldwell County Sheriff's Office. And I'll make sure to include a link to their phone number in the description of the episode. But that is all that is known up to this point. And on behalf of Silas and myself and the creepers, I just want to send a whole lot of love to the Landry family. I hope that this is one of those cases where we get answers about what happened to Jason sooner rather than later, because it's one of those cases that, again, old school creep time feeling where the thought of this person just like basically becoming a ghost in the middle of the night after having their whole life ahead of them is just like one of the saddest things.
I totally agree with those sentiments. There's so much to unpack with that and so much to discuss, because I know we kind of like skated over the whole mention of him like having an awakening or possibly trying to open up his third eye or maybe experimenting possibly with harder substances. I was curious, did they ever disclose what was found in that backpack? Because you only mentioned substances.
I think substances, I think it was just weed.
It was just weed.
Just weed. I think I might have a picture of what was actually found on the last page. I think it's just one, like a pill bottle, and it's maybe got like 5 or 6 joints in it. So it wasn't a crazy amount, but I mean, you know, it is.
Well, I mean, not to say like, listen, I mean, weed can do that to you just as much. I mean, I remember allegedly in high school, I had smoked so much at one point because I was testing my limits to see like how high I could actually get. And I got to a point where I was actually seeing things. So it's not to say that it's impossible where you can really get yourself into like a certain state or you can work up paranoia. Like if I was high, like out of my mind on a back road in rural Texas, I might also freak out.
Of course.
Like,
well, and also think about how he left 3 hours later. He might have been trying to wean himself off of the high and then
oh yeah,
finally
get himself
thought,
sobered up to drive or something.
yeah, and finally thought,
Oh, good
okay,
point.
I feel, but he's already clearly like not in his right mind if he's thinking to himself, my friends are still going to be hanging out at, well, or maybe they were. Maybe that was the friend Snapchatting at 11:30.
I know what this has reminded me of. Oh God, I can't remember the name of the case, but it was a girl who she had seemingly fallen into some kind of like a psychosis from smoking weed.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember this case? Her stepmother
Yes.
had videotaped her in the back of a car when she was saying, "I'm seeing things."
Yes.
And she was like that all night. And then the last footage they had of her was leaving very early in the morning on foot, holding a piece of paper. We don't know what was on it. She was seen walking up the highway and they never found her. I'm so sorry. I think it was Jessica something, maybe. I can't remember her name. But that's what it's reminding me of.
Yeah.
A weed-induced psychosis, possibly. Maybe that was already happening from what it sounds like from that FaceTime. And then this exacerbated things when he was on a dark road, when he had been driving and just in the solitude of his own mind, his own thoughts for a while. I don't know.
Yeah. For me, I think that's where I lean most is I think in the grand scheme of everything, the drug trafficking, sure, that could have possibly happened, or maybe this, like when I got full body chills earlier with the Snapchat and everything, I think there's so much more to that Snapchat notification. I don't know what it is, but it
could have just triggered something too. If he's already having a psychotic episode, just seeing whatever that message was or whatever that photo was could have also done something up here.
Yeah. But I also think that the time period he was living in, the isolation, the COVID of it all,
totally.
the time of year, I think people get kind of out of sorts around the holidays and when it's colder. Like, I just think it was sort of like a perfect storm of.
Yeah, I keep forgetting it was December. I keep forgetting that. I thought it was the summer for some reason. I'm thinking of Brandon. That's why.
Yeah, right. Because that was what, like July or something?
No, it was May, actually. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, May. It was the very, very end of the semester.
Yeah.
Last day of classes, actually, I think.
Oh, God. That's weird. That's also a weird parallel.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God. But yeah, I just think that this is a case of a kid that had been going through so much, was on really unstable ground, and unfortunately, I just don't think was in the right mindset to make it home. And some sort of mania panic, I think, probably happened on that back road. And maybe he did realize, like, oh God, I'm lost. But I don't know, maybe there could have been something more like wrong place, wrong time about it. But for me, it just feels so eerie, like old school feeling of a young man that's kind of started to lose the plot a little bit because of a new environment.
I think two things might be true here. I think that we're in agreement that he was having possibly some kind of a psychotic episode, whether it was induced from the drugs he was taking or this had been building up for a while from the transition to college. But the other thing that I think is true here, which reminds me actually of Bryce Laspiza, is that Bryce Laspiza was having a psychotic episode on his way home from college. And then when he crashed his car and he got out on foot, he walked and walked and walked until suddenly his scent went away near a truck stop. I think they would have found him by now if there wasn't the interference of somebody in that rural area. Whether it could have been drug related, somebody who he knew, which I don't think it was actually. I think it might have been a little more random. I definitely think Bryceless Pieces was random. That's the real mystery to me. I am in total agreement with you that I think this was some kind of a psychotic episode. And while on foot, he ran into the wrong person at the wrong time. It could be something closer to the Brandon Swanson theory, where because this is rural farmland, and I know you said the house that was nearby was abandoned, as was Brandon Swanson's. If you walk far enough, like Brandon is suspected to have done, he might have trespassed onto somebody's property, and they very well could have mistook him for an intruder, shot him dead, and then tried to cover it up. Or there's an even darker theory that he had passed out from the cold in someone's farmland, and the next morning, while someone was on a tractor, they desecrated the body by accident early in the darkness of the morning, and then maybe never even noticed, or by the time they did notice, they covered it up.
Oh my God. And
because they thought they would be liable.
And I mean, I hate even like re-mentioning, but like imagine he's fully nude. Imagine coming across a fully nude young like person
who's presenting
wondering-
with maybe like a psychotic episode.
Yeah.
And you're a farmhand, or you're the owner of the farm, and you're already paranoid, or it's in the early hours of the morning where you're waking up, you're disoriented. Somebody fires a gun.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody panics.
Mm-hmm. And here's the other thing. If it was some sort of like carjacking situation, the wallet and everything was left behind.
Mm-hmm.
So to me also that kind of doesn't make much sense.
You know, I'm truthfully, I'm stepping back from my original theory entirely that this like location was specific maybe, and that he was meeting somebody there, and that this might even be drug related. I actually don't think any of that might be true now. I really do agree with you that I think he was experiencing a form of psychosis, and then he truly ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time. While nude and in a psychotic state, and instead of receiving help or them calling 911, maybe somebody shot him.
Yeah. Well, I just hope and pray that, I hope first and foremost that he's found alive someday, but I hope that it has a Brandon Lawson, ending. If we don't get that ending, that we can figure out what the heck happened to him and where he was, because the idea of him just vanishing in the middle of nowhere is so scary to me. Like as a young boy wanting to just be home with his family he's very close with, like, it's just so sad. But that's all that's known about him up until this point.
That was an especially eerie case, I have to say. That was a really unnerving one.
Oh God.
And
it's going to stick with me.
Yeah. I mean, hats off to you though, because that research was phenomenal. But I don't know. I hope his family receives closure. I just have such a strange feeling about all of it, that this did not live and die with just him dying on his own.
Exactly. That's the thing about it, that maybe it's because it does feel so close. It's 5 years ago, but it just feels like there's got to be more, something like he's got to still be out there, or there's his body has, or
somebody
to be
knows something.
Somebody knows
something in that town.
Especially in that small town and all the little small town pockets. Like somebody knows something that lives down there. The creepers, baby. That's all I got on the Jason Landry case.
Phenomenal yet again. I can't say it enough. That was like really top notch. But wow, does that sit eerie? That's a really like hard one to walk away from.
It really is. How about that Wicked After Dark?
That Wicked After Dark, baby.
Baby, I'm holding space.
Me too. My shaky one shaky finger. Cynthia, Ari, we love you.
I was going to say, wait, who's Ari? Who's Cynthia?
Cynthia's the one with... Well, Cynthia didn't do anything. Cynthia was just sitting there, and Ari grabbed her finger that was just out. Like, Cynthia didn't do anything.
No. I'm saying out of the two of us. Who's this? Who's this and who's this?
I'm the interviewer. I'm the one who's like, well, I am in queer media, so I've seen it. Yeah.
I feel like these are the creepers. This is me.
I've seen it.
You
online.
Are in queer media.
I've seen it.
Have you watched any of the interviews afterwards where they're talking about how they both had
the variety one.
Yeah.
And John Chu's there just cracking up. I love that. I don't care what anybody says about that press tour. I was like, one, it went phenomenally well, because even if people wanted to hate on them or, talk about them in a negative way, I was like, this is exactly what a press tour is supposed to do. Create online conversation.
Exactly.
Like this, what they had. Do you know how many brand partnerships they had for that PR campaign? I was reading about it. They did something like, it was like over 450 brand campaigns they set up for that PR release. I'm talking about like the one with Xfinity, the one with Mattel to do the doll rollout, like the makeup lines, like they
major.
All like that takes, from a media standpoint, like such immense coordination. It's absolutely astounding what they did, and it was successful in my opinion. It was extremely successful.
Oh my God. Yeah, everybody and their mother was talking about it.
Wicked has become the highest grossing musical adaptation in history.
That's so
and
cool.
It is the second highest grossing film internationally that has ever had a Black female lead.
That's amazing. That's so cool.
We will have a Wicked After Dark. We're going to need to.
I was like, we need that Wicked After Dark. And I love how we started with Wicked and we ended with Wicked. It's a good bookend.
Welcome to 2025, because that will be every single episode of CreepTime, the podcast, if I'm here, by the way.
Thank God, baby. You'll be green on the next episode.
Would love to, please. I was trying to figure out a way to like break that to you. I was like, so how do you feel about doing a Wicked costume? Any thoughts on that?
Oh, baby, I have thoughts.
But you know, I wouldn't be Alphaba. I would come up as Morble. Adam Morble.
Yeah, I'll be the goat. What's his name?
Dilliman, Dr. Dilliman.
Yes.
I'll be Bach.
Oh my God, please. Oh my God.
Oh, babies.
Oh, babies. Well, creepers, that's it for now. I guess we ought to wrap it up and say goodbye.
And good luck, honeys.
Bye, creepers. We'll catch you on the next one.
See you on tour.
Guys. See you on tour.